Close your eyes now. Let your breathing slow. Feel the weight of your body sinking into comfort as we begin a journey through time, through mystery, through the endless sands of questions that shift and reshape with every passing century. Tonight, we explore not what we know, but what we might have forgotten. Not the certainty of history, but the whispers of possibility that echo across 4,500 years. The Great Pyramid of Giza, 2.5 million blocks of stone, each one weighing as much as several cars, stacked with such precision that you cannot slide a blade between them, rising nearly 500 feet into the desert sky. We have been told a story about these monuments, a story of pharaohs and slaves, of copper tools and wooden ramps, of human determination conquering impossible odds. But what if, just for tonight, we allowed ourselves to wonder differently? What if the pyramids were never built by the Egyptians we know from history books? Let yourself drift now. Let go of certainty. In this space between waking and sleeping, all possibilities can coexist. All questions can remain suspended, weightless, like stars in the vast dark of contemplation. We are not here to provide answers. We are here to explore the comfort of not knowing, the peace of mystery, the quiet beauty of questions that have no end. Breathe deeply. Let the desert winds carry you back through time, to an age when the world was younger, and perhaps very different from what we imagine. Picture this moment in your mind, slowly, gently, as you rest. It is dawn in the Giza Plateau. The year is 1798. Napoleon Bonaparte stands before the Great Pyramid. His soldiers gather behind him in the early morning light. The desert is cool at this hour, silent except for the whisper of wind across ancient stone. Napoleon looks up at the structure before him. He is a man who has conquered nations, a mind that has calculated the movements of armies across continents. And yet, here, he finds himself humbled. His engineers have made calculations. The stones in this single pyramid, if broken down and cut into blocks 1 foot square, would build a wall around all of France, 3 meters high. Every kilometer of France's borders enclosed. One pyramid, one wall, around an entire nation. This is not a monument. This is a mountain shaped by intention. Napoleon's mathematician, Gaspard Monge, has measured the angles. The pyramid's base covers 13 acres. The 4 sides align to true north with an accuracy that would not be matched by European architecture for thousands of years. The internal chambers contain shafts that point to specific stars whose positions have shifted in the millennia since the pyramid was new. Someone, somehow, calculated the movements of the heavens. Someone measured the earth itself. Someone moved mountains. And here is what troubles Napoleon, standing in that dawn light, what has troubled every visitor since. The ancient Egyptians, in their own texts, in their own hieroglyphics, never claimed to have built these structures. Not once. Not in any temple inscription. Not in any papyrus scroll. Not in any tomb painting or carved relief. The pyramids simply were. Already ancient. Already mysterious. Already beyond the understanding of the people who built their homes in their shadows. Let that thought settle over you now, like a blanket, as you drift deeper into rest. These monuments we attribute to Bronze Age civilization might have been as mysterious to the ancient Egyptians as they are to us. The pharaoh Khufu, to whom we attribute the Great Pyramid, he left inscriptions everywhere, on temples, on statues, proclaiming his achievements as all pharaohs did. But inside his supposed greatest achievement, not a single hieroglyph, not one, just bare stone chambers, empty passages, silence. When the Caliph Al-Ma'mun broke into the pyramid in 820 AD, tunneling through solid limestone because the original entrance was lost to memory, his men found nothing. No treasure, no mummy, no inscription explaining who built this place or why. Just emptiness and precision and mystery. The Greek historian Herodotus visited Egypt in 450 BC. He spoke with the priests. He asked about the pyramids. They told him they were built by Khufu, but they also told him this information came from stories, passed down. Rest now. Breathe. Let these questions float through your mind without needing answers. We have all night to explore these possibilities, all night to wonder, all night to drift through the comfortable mystery of what might have been. The pyramids have stood for so long, they will stand for longer still. And in that endurance, in that patient silence of stone, there is something deeply peaceful, something that invites us to let go of our need to know and simply exist in the presence of wonder. Close your eyes, relax your shoulders, let your breath flow naturally, and let us begin our journey into the spaces between what we know and what we might never understand. Imagine you are standing at the base of the Great Pyramid early morning before the tourists arrive. Your hand reaches out to touch the stone. It is cool despite the desert heat that will come. Smooth in places, weathered in others, solid, real, unquestionably present. You are touching a block of limestone that weighs 2.5 tons. Around you, thousands of these blocks. Above you, thousands more. Each one cut, shaped, transported, and lifted into place with such precision that the entire structure deviates from perfect alignment by less than 2 inches. Less than 2 inches, across 13 acres, across 2.5 million stones. Let that precision settle into your awareness as you relax deeper into comfort. This is not the precision of accident, not the rough approximation of trial and error. This is the precision of knowledge, of calculation, of understanding mathematics and engineering at a level that seems impossibly advanced for people who, we are told, had just recently discovered bronze. Dr. Mark Lehner, perhaps the world's foremost Egyptologist studying the pyramids, spent decades excavating the workers' village. He found the tools, copper chisels, stone hammers, the remnants of a civilization that could work stone, but slowly, laboriously, with great difficulty. And yet, here is what troubles the deepest sleep of engineers who study these monuments. Copper cannot cut granite. Let me repeat that slowly as you breathe in and out, as you sink deeper into rest. Copper cannot cut granite. Copper is soft. On the Mohs scale of mineral hardness, copper rates about 3. Bronze, its alloy with tin, might reach 4. Granite contains quartz crystals that rate 7 on that same scale. You cannot cut something harder with something softer. This is not a matter of opinion. It is physics, fundamental, unchangeable. And yet inside the Great Pyramid, there are granite beams. Each one weighs 70 tons. They form the ceiling of the king's chamber, placed with such precision that after 45 centuries, the chamber has not collapsed, has not shifted, has not failed. These beams were quarried in Aswan, 500 miles up the Nile, cut from the living bedrock, shaped into perfect rectangles, transported somehow, lifted somehow, positioned somehow, with copper tools. This is what we are asked to believe. Close your eyes tighter now. Picture in your mind the stones of Aswan, rose-colored granite, beautiful and hard. Picture Bronze Age workers with their copper chisels attempting to cut into this stone. They strike. The copper bends, deforms. It cannot bite into the granite, cannot create a groove, cannot make progress. And yet, somehow, they created beams so precisely rectangular that modern machinery cannot improve upon them. Geologist Dr. Robert Schach examined these granite surfaces with modern instruments. He found tool marks, yes, but tool marks that suggested cutting speeds and precision that would require powered machinery. The marks show a consistency, a regularity that hand tools simply cannot achieve. Imagine trying to sand a piece of wood by hand, perfectly smooth, perfectly even, across 20 feet of surface. Now imagine that wood is harder than steel. Now imagine doing this 2,000 years before the Iron Age. The impossibility begins to weigh on the mind, begins to press against our comfortable certainties. But let that pressure dissolve now. Let it fade as you fade towards sleep. We are not here to solve these mysteries. We are here to rest in their presence, to let them wash over us like gentle waves of wondering. There are granite boxes in the Serapeum of Saqqara, 24 of them, each carved from a single piece of granite, each weighing 65 tons, hollowed out to a tolerance of a few microns. For context, a human hair is about 70 microns wide. These boxes are more precise than most modern buildings, more precise than necessary for any practical purpose, more precise than makes sense for a culture that supposedly worked by candlelight with hand tools. And they are ancient. So ancient that by the time classical Egypt was flourishing, by the time we have written records, these boxes were already sealed, already forgotten, already mysterious. The Egyptians who later ruled this land would make offerings at these sites, would consider them sacred, would wonder at their purpose just as we do. They did not claim to have made them. They claimed to be their inheritors, their protectors, but not their creators. Let this thought drift through your consciousness like a leaf on water. The ancient Egyptians, those people of the Nile whom we know from history, might have been archaeologists themselves, discovering, wondering, attributing great age to monuments they could not explain. The Egyptian historian and priest Manetho, writing in the 3rd century BC, recorded the history of Egypt in his now lost work, Egyptiaca. What survives through quotations suggests he believed the pyramids were built in an age before the historical dynasties, in a time he called the time of the gods. Not metaphorically, he meant this literally, a time when gods, or beings considered gods, walked the earth. We dismiss this as mythology, as primitive superstition, as the storytelling of people who didn't know better. But what if Manetho was recording genuine historical memory, distant, degraded through millennia of retelling, but rooted in truth? What if there was a time before the Egypt we know? A civilization that rose and built and disappeared, leaving only its most durable monuments behind? Breathe deeply now. Let your body relax completely. There is no urgency in these questions. They have waited thousands of years. They can wait through your peaceful rest. Consider the Sphinx. We see it now, weathered and worn, its lion body stretched before us, its human face gazing eternally at the rising sun. We are told it was carved by Pharaoh Khafra around 2500 BC. The face, we are told, is his face, in stone, eternal. But the geologist Robert Schoch studied the weathering patterns on the Sphinx enclosure, the vertical fissures, the undulating surface, the deep erosion, and he found something that shouldn't exist: water erosion. Not wind erosion, which creates horizontal patterns, sharp edges, the kind of weathering we see everywhere else on the Giza Plateau, but water erosion, vertical channels, deep weathering. The kind created by persistent rainfall over centuries, the kind that requires a climate that hasn't existed in Egypt for 7,000 years at minimum, perhaps much longer. Let that time frame expand in your imagination as you drift. 7,000 years, before the first dynasty, before writing, before any civilization we have record of in that region. The Sphinx, weathered by rains that fell when the Sahara was green, when rivers ran through what is now desert, when the climate was completely different, which means either the Sphinx is far, far older than we believe, or the laws of geology are wrong. Schoch presented his findings to the Geological Society of America, not to Egyptologists, to geologists, people who study rock and weathering as their life's work. And the response was cautious but clear. The weathering patterns are consistent with water erosion, with age far greater than the conventional dating. But Egyptology rejects this dating, not because of geological evidence, but because it doesn't fit the historical timeline. It would mean the Sphinx existed before the civilization that supposedly built it, which is impossible, which breaks the story we tell ourselves about human history. And so, we are left with a choice: trust the stones or trust the story. As you rest, as you sink deeper into the quiet dark of approaching sleep, let yourself release the need to choose. Both can exist in this space, possibility and impossibility side by side, like the two lands of Egypt itself, the black soil and the red desert, eternally adjacent, eternally distinct. There is an inventory stela discovered at Giza that predates Khufu. It lists various temples and monuments, and it mentions the Sphinx as already ancient, already in need of restoration, already mysterious. If this stela is accurate, and there is no reason to doubt it except that it contradicts our timeline, then the Sphinx was old when the pyramids were supposedly young, which raises the most troubling question of all. If the Sphinx is older than we think, might the pyramids be older too? Might they all be remnants of something we have forgotten? Some chapter of human history that has been lost to the depths of time. The stones cannot speak, they can only endure, can only wait, patient as the desert itself, for us to stop telling them what they are, and start listening to what they might be trying to tell us. Rest now. Let these thoughts dissolve like morning mist. Let the mystery enfold you like the darkness enfolds the desert when the sun goes down. There is peace in not knowing. There is comfort in the presence of questions too large to answer. The pyramids will still be there tomorrow. They have been there for thousands of tomorrows already. They will be there for thousands more. And in their patient endurance, in their silent testimony to something beyond our understanding, there is a strange and gentle invitation to wonder, to dream, to rest in the presence of the unknowable. In your mind's eye, as you rest, as you drift, picture a circle, perfect, complete, infinite in its symmetry. Now, picture someone, thousands of years ago, trying to measure this circle, trying to understand the relationship between its circumference and its diameter, trying to calculate that strange infinite number we call pi. Pi, 3.14159, continuing forever, never repeating, never ending. A number that describes the fundamental geometry of the universe itself. It took humanity thousands of years of mathematics to calculate pi to even modest precision. Archimedes, one of the greatest minds of ancient Greece, managed to calculate it to 2 decimal places. In the 5th century AD, Chinese mathematicians reached 7 decimal places. This was considered a towering achievement of human knowledge. And yet, the Great Pyramid, built supposedly 2,000 years before Archimedes even lived, encodes pi into its very dimensions. Let that fact settle gently into your awareness as you breathe slowly, as you relax deeper. The height of the pyramid multiplied by 2 times pi equals the perimeter of the base. Exactly. To a precision that suggests not coincidence, not accident, but knowledge. Deliberate, sophisticated mathematical knowledge. The pyramid is 280 Egyptian royal cubits tall. Its base is 440 cubits on each side. If you perform the calculation, 280 times 2 times pi, you get 1,760. The perimeter, 440 times 4, is 1,761. 1,760. Perfect. Precise. Intentional. This means that whoever designed the Great Pyramid understood pi, not approximately, not roughly, but with a precision that wouldn't be matched in Europe until the Renaissance, 3,000 years later. But that's not all. As you rest, let your mind drift over these additional impossibilities, each one a gentle wave of wonder. The pyramid encodes the dimensions of the Earth itself. Its height, 481 feet in its original state, before the capstone was lost, is exactly 143,200th the polar radius of the Earth. Its base perimeter is exactly 143,200th the circumference of the Earth at the equator. 43,200, a number that appears again and again in ancient measurements, in sacred geometry, in mythologies around the world. A number that suggests a global system of knowledge, shared across vast distances, or inherited from a common source. How did Bronze Age builders know the dimensions of the Earth? They couldn't. They shouldn't. And yet, there it is, encoded in stone, mathematically undeniable. Sir Isaac Newton himself, the father of modern physics, studied the Great Pyramid. He believed it contained ancient wisdom, mathematical relationships that might help him understand gravity, celestial mechanics, the hidden workings of creation. Newton was not a foolish man. He calculated the orbits of planets. He described the fundamental laws of motion. He was perhaps the greatest scientific mind in human history. And he believed the pyramid held knowledge that predated and perhaps exceeded his own civilization's understanding. Let yourself drift now, comfortable, peaceful, as we explore more of these mathematical whispers from stone. The pyramid's sides are oriented to true north with an accuracy of 3/60 of a single degree. This is more accurate than the Royal Observatory at Greenwich, built with all the advantages of modern instrumentation. More accurate than most buildings constructed today. To achieve this alignment, you need to understand astronomy at a sophisticated level. You need to track the stars over long periods. You need to calculate and compensate for the Earth's rotation. You need knowledge that, according to our history books, didn't exist in 2500 BC. The ancient Egyptians, we are told, used simple tools, string and stakes, shadows and sun, basic geometry. And somehow, with these simple tools, they achieved what modern surveyors struggle to match. Inside the pyramid, the Grand Gallery rises at an angle of 26 degrees. This is not random. This angle appears throughout the structure, in chamber orientations, in passage alignments, in relationships between different sections. 26 degrees, half of 52 degrees, and 52 is significant because the Great Pyramid's slope angle is approximately 51.84 degrees. These numbers interrelate, forming a web of geometric relationships that suggest deep mathematical understanding. The King's Chamber measures 10 cubits wide by 20 cubits long by 11.18 cubits high. These are not arbitrary dimensions. They create a chamber whose diagonal measurement from corner to corner equals the width times the square root of 5, a sophisticated geometric relationship that produces what's known as a golden rectangle, the golden ratio, phi 1.618. Another infinite number, like pi, that describes proportions found throughout nature, from seashells to galaxies, from the human body to the arrangement of leaves on a stem. The ancient Greeks believed the golden ratio was the most aesthetically perfect proportion. Renaissance artists used it to create masterworks. Modern designers still employ it for balance and beauty. And here it is, encoded in a chamber deep inside a pyramid, supposedly built by people pounding copper chisels with stone hammers, working by torchlight in cramped passages. As you rest, as you let these mathematical realities wash over you like warm water, consider what they mean. These are not approximate relationships, not close enough coincidences. These are precise encodings of sophisticated mathematical concepts. If one or two of these relationships existed, we might call it chance. But dozens of them, all working together, all mathematically coherent. That's not chance. That's knowledge. The question that whispers through the darkness as you drift towards sleep is simple. Where did this knowledge come from? Some researchers, like Graham Hancock and Robert Bauval, suggest the pyramids are much older than we think, that they were built by a sophisticated civilization during the last ice age, when the climate was different, when the stars were in different positions, when humanity might have achieved heights we've forgotten. They point to the Orion correlation theory, the idea that the three pyramids of Giza match the three stars of Orion's belt, not as they appeared in 2500 BC, but as they appeared around 10,500 BC, when the constellation was at its lowest point in its precessional cycle. Precession, the slow wobble of Earth's axis, taking 26,000 years to complete one full cycle. This changes which stars are visible and where they appear in the sky over thousands of years. If the pyramids align with Orion's belt as it appeared 12,500 years ago, then either the builders could predict the future with impossible accuracy, or they built the pyramids back then, in an age we have no record of, by people whose civilization has been completely erased by time. Orthodox Egyptology rejects this. The carbon dating of organic materials found in the pyramid suggests construction around 2500 BC. The pottery shards, the tools, the worker camps, all support the conventional timeline. But carbon dating tells us when organic material died, when wood was cut, when rope was woven. It doesn't tell us when stone was quarried and stacked. What if the pyramids are far older, and the Egyptians of the dynastic period simply repaired them, maintained them, left their tools and camps and debris around monuments they inherited from a forgotten age? Breathe slowly now. Let your consciousness drift. These questions need no answers tonight. They are simply companions for your journey into sleep. Gentle mysteries to cradle your rest. Consider one more mathematical impossibility, and then let yourself descend into deeper peace. The cubit. The Egyptian royal cubit was 20.62 inches long. This measurement wasn't arbitrary. It was derived from astronomy, from the measurement of Earth itself. The royal cubit is 1/10,000,000th of the polar radius of Earth. Think about that as you relax, as you let go. The basic unit of measurement used to build the pyramids was derived from the dimensions of the planet, which means they knew those dimensions, which means they had achieved global surveying of a sophistication we barely managed in the 18th century. The meter, our modern standard, was defined in 1791 as 1/10,000,000th of the distance from the North Pole to the equator. We thought we were being innovative, scientific, advanced, But the Egyptians, or whoever taught them, had done the same thing nearly 5,000 years earlier, perhaps much earlier still. Who taught them? How did they know? Where did this knowledge come from? The answers are lost. Only the mathematics remain, frozen in stone, patient and eternal as the stars themselves. And perhaps that's enough. Perhaps the mystery itself is the gift. The reminder that human history is deeper than we remember, stranger than we suppose, filled with chapters that have been torn out and lost to time. Rest now. Let the mathematics dissolve into dreams. Let the precision become soft and abstract, numbers floating through the dark like distant stars. The pyramids know their secrets. They have kept them for millennia. They will keep them for millennia more. And in their silence, in their patient refusal to explain themselves, there is something deeply restful, something that invites us to stop seeking certainty. And picture yourself now, in your resting mind, walking through the streets of ancient Memphis, the capital of Old Kingdom Egypt, the city of pharaohs and priests, of markets and temples, of scribes recording every detail of daily life. The Egyptians were obsessive record keepers. They carved their achievements into every available surface. Temple walls told stories of battles won, lands conquered, gods appeased. Tomb walls depicted daily life in minute detail, farming, fishing, feasting, working. Papyrus scrolls recorded tax collections, grain distributions, legal disputes. They documented everything. Their civilization was built on documentation, on the written word, on the recording of deeds for eternity. And yet, about the construction of the pyramids, the greatest engineering project in their civilization's history, they left almost nothing. Let that absence settle into your awareness as you breathe, as you sink deeper into comfortable rest. Silence, not secrecy, not hidden knowledge, just silence. The absence of testimony, the void where celebration should be. When Ramesses II built his temple at Abu Simbel, he ensured every visitor would know his name. The facade, 60 feet tall, shows 4 massive statues of the pharaoh seated in majesty. Hieroglyphic inscriptions proclaim his divinity, his victories, his eternal glory. When Hatshepsut built her mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari, she covered its walls with the story of her divine birth, her trading expeditions, her right to rule. Every column, every relief, every surface spoke of her achievements. This was the Egyptian way. To build was to proclaim. To create was to sign your name across eternity. So, where are the proclamations about the pyramids? In all the texts from the Pyramid Age, the 3rd and 4th dynasties, there are references to the pyramids, yes, but not to their construction, only to their existence, to their maintenance, to offerings made at their temples. Khufu's name appears in a few places, graffiti and relieving chambers above the king's chamber, discovered in the 19th century. But these marks, painted hastily in red ochre, look more like shipping marks than official inscriptions. Labels on blocks, not proclamations of achievement. Some researchers question whether these marks are even authentic, suggesting they might have been added later by archaeologists eager to confirm the pyramid's attribution. But even if we accept them as genuine, they tell us nothing about how the pyramid was built. Nothing about the methods, the tools, the years of labor. Just a name, painted on a few stones, in chambers no one was ever meant to see. As you rest, as you let your mind drift through these ancient silences, consider what is missing. No inscriptions describing the quarrying techniques. No papyri detailing the workforce organization. No tomb paintings showing the construction process. No priestly texts explaining the mathematical principles. No royal decrees commanding the work. No celebration reliefs showing the pyramid's completion. Nothing. For a project that supposedly took 20 years, employed 100,000 workers, and represented the greatest achievement of the civilization, nothing. It's as if the pyramids simply appeared, were always there, required no explanation because they were beyond explanation. The pyramid texts inscribed in later pyramids from the 5th and 6th dynasties are religious spells meant to help the pharaoh ascend to the afterlife. They reference the pyramids, but as existing structures, ancient even then, as stairways to heaven, built by the gods themselves, not by Khufu, not by human hands, by gods. Let that distinction rest gently in your mind. The Egyptians themselves in their sacred texts attributed the pyramids to divine origin, to forces beyond human capability. We interpret this as metaphor, as religious poetry, as primitive people explaining what they didn't understand. But what if they understood perfectly well? What if they were simply recording the truth as it had been passed down to them? Herodotus, the Greek historian, visited Egypt around 450 BC, 2,000 years after the Pyramid Age. He interviewed priests and locals, collecting stories about the pyramids. He was told that Khufu built the Great Pyramid over 20 years, using 100,000 men working in 3-month shifts. They used wooden machines to lift the stones. They built a causeway to transport blocks from the quarry. But Herodotus also noted something else. He said the Egyptians hated Khufu, called him an evil tyrant who closed the temples, forbade religious worship, and enslaved the entire population to build his monument. This is strange, because nowhere in Egyptian records is Khufu portrayed as evil. His name appears with normal royal epithets, no unusual condemnation, no historical record of the oppression Herodotus describes. What Herodotus recorded seems to be folk memory, stories people told about structures they didn't really understand, attributed to a pharaoh from the distant past, because someone had to have built them. And the details he provides, the wooden machines, the rotating workforce, these might be projections of how the Greeks themselves would have approached such a project, not accurate descriptions of Egyptian methods. As you drift deeper now, as sleep draws closer, let yourself feel the weight of these silences, the absence of documentation, the gap where testimony should be. There is something called the Westcar Papyrus, dating to the Middle Kingdom, about 1,000 years after the Pyramid Age. It contains stories about the 4th dynasty pharaohs, including Khufu. These stories have the character of myths, of tales told for entertainment. In one story, a magician creates a wax crocodile that comes to life. In another, a magician parts water. These are not historical accounts. They are fantasies about an age already ancient, already mysterious to the people recording them. The Pyramid Age, even to later Egyptians, had already become mythological. A time of wonders, a time when different rules applied, a time they could barely comprehend. The Turin King List, one of the most important surviving documents of Egyptian chronology, lists the pharaohs in order. But before the first historical dynasties, it lists the followers of Horus, divine or semi-divine rulers who governed in the mythical past. Before them, the Neteru, the gods themselves, ruling Egypt for tens of thousands of years. Orthodox historians dismiss this as mythology, as religious belief conflated with history, as the Egyptian need to connect their civilization to divine origins. But Egyptian chronology was usually quite precise. They recorded the length of each pharaoh's reign. They tracked lunar cycles, Nile floods, celestial events. They were sophisticated timekeepers. What if the deep chronology, the lists of divine and semi-divine rulers, represents something real? Distant, degraded through countless retellings, but rooted in genuine historical memory. What if there was a time before the Egypt we know? A time when those who had the knowledge to build the pyramids lived and ruled and taught? And what if the silence in historical records isn't absence, but loss? Information that existed once, carved on now destroyed temples, written on papyri that have crumbled to dust, passed orally through generations until the meanings changed and only the myths remained? Breathe slowly now. Let these possibilities float through your mind like clouds across a desert sky, shapeless, drifting, requiring nothing of you. There is peace in acknowledging what we don't know, in accepting that history has gaps, that time erases more than it preserves, that the further back we look, the dimmer the light becomes, until we're peering into a darkness that reveals nothing but shadows and suggestions. The pyramids stand in that darkness, silent, patient, keeping their secrets close. Maybe they were built by the Egyptians we know from history, using methods we don't understand, but which were nevertheless human, achievable, explainable. Maybe they were built by an earlier people, a predecessor civilization, whose achievements the Egyptians inherited and claimed. Maybe they are older than we can imagine, built by a global culture that rose and fell in prehistory, leaving only its most durable monuments behind. All of these are possible, none can be proven. The stones don't speak, the texts don't tell. The silence continues, comfortable and complete, like the darkness behind closed eyes. Rest in that silence now. Let it hold you. Let it be enough. The mysteries remain. They have remained for thousands of years. They will remain for thousands more. And that's not a failure. That's a gift. A reminder that we are small, that time is vast, that some questions are too large for answers. Let the silence cradle you now. Let it whisper you. Rest now as we consider the practical, the physical, the simple question of how. How do you cut 2.5 million blocks of stone? How do you shape them? Transport them? Lift them into place? How do you do this with Bronze Age technology in the span of 20 years, with precision that modern machinery struggles to match? Let your mind drift through these questions gently, without strain, as you sink deeper into comfort. We have found the tools. Archaeologists working at Giza have uncovered thousands of them. Copper chisels, stone hammers, wooden mallets, the implements of ancient craftsmen left behind when the work was done. These tools tell us something, but what they tell us is troubling. In 1984, a team of master stonemasons from Japan, the Kato Corporation, attempted to build a small pyramid using ancient methods. They would use only tools and techniques available to the ancient Egyptians. No modern machinery, no steel, nothing that wouldn't have existed in 2500 BC. They planned to build a pyramid 1/16 the size of the Great Pyramid, just 60 feet tall. Using limestone and granite, properly cut and shaped, following ancient principles. The project was a disaster. Let that sink in as you breathe slowly, as you relax completely. Modern master craftsmen, using ancient methods, couldn't build even a tiny pyramid successfully. They tried using copper saws to cut limestone. The copper wore out almost immediately. The saw teeth bent and deformed. Progress was agonizingly slow. After days of work, they had barely made a dent in a single block. They gave up on cutting granite entirely. It was impossible. Copper couldn't even scratch the surface. They eventually resorted to modern diamond-tipped saws to cut the granite blocks, abandoning the ancient methods as unworkable. For transport, they tried using wooden sleds and rollers. Hauling the stones across sand required enormous teams of people. The sleds broke, the rollers splintered, the ropes snapped. Moving even modest blocks was exhausting, dangerous, and inefficient. When they tried to lift the blocks into place, the situation worsened. The ramps they built following theoretical ancient designs couldn't support the weight. The levers they fashioned from wood broke under the strain. The stones shifted and cracked. Eventually, embarrassed and frustrated, the project organizers brought in modern cranes and trucks to finish the pyramid. Even then, with all the advantages of modern engineering, the final structure was rough, uneven, misaligned. Nothing like the precision of the ancient pyramids. This experiment was supposed to prove that the pyramids could be built with ancient technology. Instead, it proved the opposite. That even with modern knowledge, modern metallurgy, modern safety equipment, and only a tiny fraction of the scale, it was nearly impossible. So, how did the ancient Egyptians do it? Breathe deeply now. Let your body relax as we consider the numbers, the simple, undeniable mathematics of impossibility. The Great Pyramid contains approximately 2.3 million blocks. It was supposedly built in 20 years. That's just over 100,000 blocks per year, about 340 blocks per day, roughly 1 block every 2 minutes of every day for 20 years straight. 2 minutes per block. To quarry it, cut it, transport it miles from the quarry to the pyramid, lift it into position, set it perfectly in place, then immediately begin the next block. No breaks, no mistakes, no delays for weather, equipment failure, or human error. 2 minutes per block continuously for 2 decades. As you drift towards sleep, let your mind try to picture this. The quarries running constantly. Teams cutting stone with copper tools that shouldn't work, but somehow do. Transport crews moving blocks that weigh as much as cars, flowing in an endless stream from quarry to pyramid. Lift teams hoisting these blocks up ramps, higher and higher as the pyramid grows, without ever slowing down. 2 minutes per block. It's not possible. Not with the tools we've found. Not with the techniques we understand. Not in the time frame we've assigned. And yet, undeniably, impossibly there it stands. Let's consider the ramp theory, the most common explanation for how the blocks were lifted. To build a ramp that could reach the pyramid's apex, 481 feet high, at a manageable slope of about 10 degrees, you would need a ramp nearly a mile long. The amount of material required to build such a ramp would exceed the amount of material in the pyramid itself. And as the pyramid grew taller, the ramp would need to be continuously extended and raised. The logistics become absurd. The labor required would multiply beyond any reasonable calculation. Internal ramp theories suggest the ramp was built inside the pyramid itself, spiraling up through the structure. But this creates other problems. How do you maneuver massive blocks around tight corners? How do you create a ramp system that allows for the precision placement of the outer casing stones? How do you deconstruct the ramp afterward without damaging the structure? No evidence of these internal ramps has been found. The interior of the pyramid is solid stone. If ramps existed, they left no trace. No voids, no filled-in chambers, no structural anomalies. As you rest, as you breathe, let yourself release the need for answers. Let the impossibilities exist without resolution. Some researchers have suggested the ancient Egyptians had access to knowledge or technologies we don't understand. Not necessarily advanced machinery, but perhaps different principles, different approaches to moving and shaping stone. Christopher Dunn, a master machinist, examined the granite boxes in the Serapeum and the saw marks in various stone artifacts. His conclusion, the precision and consistency suggest machine tooling. Not primitive machine tooling, but advanced. The kind that requires detailed understanding of mechanics, materials, and manufacturing processes. He found evidence of circular saw marks in granite blocks, marks that suggest saws over 9 feet in diameter, cutting at speeds and with pressures that would require powered machinery. He found drill holes in granite that showed regular spiral grooves, indicating the drill was cutting through granite at a rate of 1/10 of an inch per revolution. Modern drills, using diamond bits and significant power, cut granite at 1/2000th of an inch per revolution. The ancient tools were apparently 50 times more efficient than ours. This shouldn't be possible. Dunn himself admits it challenges everything we think we know about ancient technology. But the evidence is there, in the stone, undeniable to anyone who examines it closely. So, we're left with uncomfortable choices. Either the ancient Egyptians had access to powered machinery, which contradicts everything we know about their civilization, or they had techniques for working stone that we've completely lost and cannot duplicate even with modern technology. Or someone else built these structures, someone whose capabilities exceeded both ancient Egypt and, in some ways, our own. None of these options fit comfortably into conventional history. Breathe slowly now. Let the tension of impossibility dissolve. Let it become abstract, dreamlike, as you drift deeper into rest. There are geopolymer theories, suggestions that the blocks weren't cut at all, but cast like concrete, using a mixture of crushed limestone and ancient chemical binders. This would explain the precision, the lack of tool marks in some places, the perfect fitting of irregular surfaces. But chemical analysis of the blocks shows they're natural limestone, not reconstituted. The crystal structure is wrong for cast material, and there's no evidence the Egyptians had the chemical knowledge to create such a sophisticated bonding agent. There are acoustic levitation theories, the idea that sound at certain frequencies can reduce the effective weight of objects, making them easier to move. Ancient texts from various cultures mention priests or adepts who could move stones by chanting or playing instruments. We dismiss this as myth, but there are documented cases of acoustic levitation in modern physics. Sound waves can indeed create pressure differentials that counteract gravity, at least for small objects in carefully controlled conditions. Could ancient engineers have understood acoustic principles we're only rediscovering? Could the granite chambers inside the pyramid, with their resonant frequencies, have been part of some technology we don't understand? It seems far-fetched. The physics would be extraordinary. But so is the pyramid itself, extraordinary in ways we still can't fully explain. Let your mind wander through these possibilities now, soft and comfortable, like walking through mist. Nothing solid, nothing certain, just suggestions and shadows and the gentle mystery of not knowing. Perhaps the most honest answer is the simplest. We don't know. We don't know how they cut the stones. We don't know how they transported them. We don't know how they lifted them. We don't know how they achieve such precision. We have theories, many theories, but no definitive answers, no explanation that accounts for all the evidence, no method that we can reproduce successfully. The pyramids exist, the tools exist, but the knowledge that connected the two, that translated simple implements into impossible achievements, that knowledge is lost. Or perhaps it was never written down. Perhaps it was held in the minds of masters, passed from teacher to apprentice, guarded carefully, and eventually forgotten when the last practitioner died. Or perhaps the tools we found weren't the real tools. Perhaps they were for maintenance, for later work, for tasks other than the original construction. Perhaps the real tools, whatever they were, have long since been removed, recycled, lost to time. Rest now in the comfort of unknowing. Let the questions recede like waves pulling back from shore. Let the mystery remain mysterious. The pyramids have stood for thousands of years without explaining themselves. They don't need our understanding to endure. They simply are, massive and patient, holding their secrets close. And in their silent refusal to yield those secrets, there is something almost compassionate, a reminder that we don't need to understand everything, that some things can remain mysterious, that the universe is under no obligation to make sense to us. Close your eyes deeper now. Breathe, release. The stones will still be there tomorrow. The questions will still exist. The mystery will continue. And that's enough. That's perfect. That's exactly as it should be. Look up now, in your mind, as you rest. Picture the night sky over Egypt. No city lights, no pollution. Just the vast desert dark, and above it, the sweep of the Milky Way, brilliant and clear, stretching from horizon to horizon. The ancient Egyptians were sky watchers, astronomers. The flooding of the Nile, which sustained their entire civilization, was predicted by the heliacal rising of Sirius, the moment when the star first became visible on the eastern horizon before dawn. They tracked the stars, built their temples aligned to celestial events, organized their calendar around the movements of the heavens, and they built shafts into the Great Pyramid that point directly at specific stars. Let that fact settle gently into your consciousness as you breathe, as you drift. Not windows, not ventilation, shafts, narrow passages, barely 8 inches square, angled precisely through hundreds of feet of solid stone. 2 shafts in the king's chamber, 2 in the queen's chamber, each one aimed with extraordinary precision at a particular point in the sky. The southern shaft of the king's chamber points to Al-Nitak, the lowest star in Orion's belt, the star the Egyptians associated with Osiris, god of death and resurrection, lord of the afterlife. The northern shaft points to Thuban, which was the pole star in 2500 BC, the star around which all other stars appeared to rotate, the still point in the turning heavens. These aren't approximate alignments. These are precise, deliberate, meaningful. As you rest, as you let your mind wander through the darkness behind closed eyes, consider what these shafts represent. They required extraordinary planning. You cannot adjust the angle of a shaft once construction begins. You cannot correct mistakes. You must know, with absolute certainty, where you're aiming before you place the first stone. Which means whoever designed these shafts understood precession, the slow wobble of Earth's axis that causes the position of stars to shift over thousands of years. They understood it well enough to calculate where specific stars would appear in the sky, not just in their own time, but for thousands of years into the future or past. Robert Bauval, an engineer and independent researcher, spent years studying these shaft alignments. His conclusion: the shafts weren't just pointing at stars, they were creating a map, a celestial diagram, a connection between Earth and sky. The 3 pyramids of Giza, viewed from above, match the pattern of the 3 stars in Orion's belt, not just approximately, precisely, including the slight offset of the smallest pyramid, which corresponds to the slight offset of the dimmest star, and the Nile River, flowing beside the pyramids, corresponds to the Milky Way, flowing beside Orion in the night sky, Earth reflecting heaven, a principle the Egyptians explicitly believed in, expressed in their phrase, "as above, so below." But here's where Bauval's theory becomes troubling to orthodox chronology. The alignment isn't perfect for 2500 BC. It's close, but not exact. The correlation improves the further back you go. And it's absolutely perfect around 10,500 BC, 10,500 years before the Common Era, when the Ice Age was ending, when, according to conventional history, humans were still hunter-gatherers, before agriculture, before cities, before any civilization we have record of. But if you look at the sky as it appeared then, on the spring equinox at dawn, Orion's belt was at its lowest point in its precessional cycle, and the pyramids match that position exactly. Let this timeline expand in your resting mind. 12,500 years ago, what did the world look like then? The Sahara was green, rivers flowed where now there's only sand. The climate was wetter, cooler, more hospitable. The Mediterranean coastline was different. The Nile Delta didn't exist in its current form. And according to conventional archaeology, humanity was primitive, living in small bands, hunting and gathering, barely surviving. But what if that's wrong? What if there was a civilization then, advanced and sophisticated, that we've simply lost all record of? What if the pyramids are their legacy, the last remaining testament to a people who achieved greatness and then disappeared? Breathe slowly now. Let these vast timescales wash over you like waves. Let yourself feel small in the presence of such deep time, such profound mystery. There are myths from around the world about a great flood, a cataclysm that destroyed an earlier world. The story appears in Sumerian texts, in the Bible, in Greek mythology, in Native American traditions, in legends from Australia and the Pacific Islands. Different cultures, separated by oceans and millennia, telling the same basic story. Once there was a great civilization. Then came the waters. The world was drowned. Only a few survivors remained to rebuild. We treat these as myths, as primitive attempts to explain natural disasters, as storytelling, not history. But what if they're memories, degraded through countless retellings, changed and elaborated with each generation, but rooted in a real event, a real catastrophe? Geological evidence confirms that at the end of the last ice age, sea levels rose dramatically, over 400 feet of rise as the glaciers melted. Coastlines drowned, islands vanished, river valleys became ocean channels. If there was a coastal civilization at that time, and coastal areas would have been the most habitable, the most resource-rich, it would have been completely obliterated, its cities drowned, its people scattered, its knowledge lost. Only the highest structures, built far inland, on elevated plateaus like Giza, would have survived. As you drift deeper towards sleep, picture the flood. Slow at first, then faster. The sea rising inch by inch, year by year, century by century. Coastal settlements abandoned, populations retreating inland. Knowledge fragmenting as communities dispersed. Writing systems lost, technologies forgotten. Until all that remained were stories, myths, and monuments too massive to be buried, too precisely built to crumble. The Egyptian priests told Plato about Atlantis, a great civilization, they said, that existed 9,000 years before their time, advanced in architecture, in astronomy, in governance, then destroyed in a day and a night by floods and earthquakes. Plato recorded this as a philosophical allegory. Modern scholars dismiss it as fiction, but the priests insisted it was history, old knowledge, carefully preserved in the archives of their temples. Could they have been telling the truth? Could Atlantis, or whatever that civilization was actually called, have been real? The shafts in the pyramid point backward in time, to 10,500 BC, to the exact era when the priests said Atlantis fell, to the moment when the Ice Age ended and the world was reshaped by rising waters. Coincidence or connection? Let your mind rest with these questions. Let them float in the darkness like stars themselves, distant and untouchable, but beautiful in their mystery. There are other astronomical alignments in ancient structures around the world: Stonehenge, Angkor Wat, the temples of Angkor, Mayan pyramids, the Nazca lines. Different continents, different cultures, different time periods according to conventional dating. And yet all of them demonstrate sophisticated understanding of astronomy. All of them track the stars. All of them encode celestial knowledge into their architecture. Why? What were they trying to preserve? What message were they encoding in stone and earth and astronomical alignment? Perhaps they knew the stars were eternal. That stone could endure when everything else, papyrus, wood, fabric, even bronze, would decay. That if knowledge needed to survive a cataclysm, it had to be carved into the most durable monuments possible. The pyramids, then, might be more than tombs, more than monuments to pharaohs. They might be libraries, archives, repositories of knowledge from a civilization that knew it was ending and wanted to leave something behind. The mathematical relationships we discussed earlier, pi, the golden ratio, the dimensions of Earth, these weren't just showing off. They were teaching, leaving clues, saying to whoever came after, we knew these things, we understood, we were here, remember us. And perhaps the shaft alignments were the most important message of all, a way of dating the structure, a timestamp carved not in years, which can be misread or forgotten, but in the stars themselves, which move in predictable cycles and which anyone with sufficient astronomical knowledge could decode. We built this when Orion's belt looked like this, the shafts might be saying. Count back from your own time. Calculate the precession. Find us in the deep past. Know that we existed. The universe is so old. The stars have burned for billions of years. Human civilizations rise and fall in the blink of a cosmic eye. Who's to say we're the first? Who's to say our civilization is the pinnacle of human achievement? Who's to say there weren't others before us, just as sophisticated, just as confident in their permanence, who fell to catastrophes we can barely imagine and left behind only their most enduring works? The stars remember, the stones remember, and perhaps deep in our collective unconscious, in the myths we tell and retell, in the monuments we're drawn to but cannot fully explain, perhaps we remember too. Let that memory, vague and dreamy as it is, comfort you now. Let yourself feel connected to the deep past, to the builders, whoever they were, whenever they lived, to the long chain of human consciousness stretching back through the millennia. We are all children of those who survived, all inheritors of knowledge so old we've forgotten we possess it, all bearers of the same longing to understand, to build, to leave something behind that says, we were here, we mattered, we knew. The shafts still point to the stars, the pyramids still stand, and the questions remain, eternal and patient as the cosmos itself. Sleep now, dream of stars, dream of stones, dream of the infinite mist water. The absence of it defines Egypt now. The desert stretches in every direction, sand and stone and relentless sun. The Nile, that narrow ribbon of life, is the only green in a landscape of brown and gold. But it wasn't always this way. As you rest, as you breathe, let your imagination carry you back. 10,000 years, 15,000, to a time when the Sahara was not a desert but a savanna, when rains fell regularly, when lakes dotted the landscape and rivers ran through valleys that are now nothing but dry wadis filled with sand. This isn't speculation, this is geological fact, the African humid period, scientists call it, lasting from approximately 15,000 years ago to about 5,000 years ago. A time when the climate was fundamentally different, when North Africa was green. And in this wetter, greener Egypt, the Sphinx sat exposed to the rain. Let yourself picture it now, in the gentle drift toward sleep. The Sphinx, carved from the living bedrock of the Giza Plateau, its lion body, its human face, gazing east toward the rising sun, but not dry and weathered by wind and sand, wet. Regularly drenched by rainfall, water running down its sides, pooling in the enclosure around it, flowing in streams across the limestone, for centuries, for millennia. This is what Robert Schoch discovered when he examined the Sphinx as a geologist rather than an archaeologist. The weathering patterns don't match wind erosion, they match water erosion. Specifically, rainfall erosion. The Sphinx enclosure walls show deep vertical fissures, undulating surfaces, rounded edges. These are characteristic features of rainfall erosion, where water runs down vertical surfaces over long periods, following the natural weaknesses in the stone, cutting deeper and deeper channels. You can see similar patterns on limestone formations in wet climates all over the world, but you don't see them in the Egyptian desert, because the Egyptian desert hasn't had significant rainfall for thousands of years. Everything else at Giza, the pyramids, the temples, the mastaba tombs, shows wind erosion, horizontal weathering, sharp edges worn smooth by sand carried on the wind. This is what you'd expect in a desert climate, but the Sphinx enclosure is different, unique, anomalous. Schoch presented his findings to the Geological Society of America in 1991. He brought photographs, measurements, comparative analysis with other weathered limestone structures. His conclusion? The Sphinx must be at least 7,000 to 9,000 years old, possibly much older, old enough to have been exposed to the rainfall patterns of the African humid period. Breathe slowly now. Let the implications of this dating settle into your resting mind. 7,000 years old, minimum. That puts the Sphinx firmly in the Neolithic period, before the first Egyptian dynasty, before writing, before any civilization we have record of in Egypt. Who carved it? Why? How? Orthodox Egyptology rejected Schoch's findings, not on geological grounds, the geology is sound, but on historical grounds. It doesn't fit the timeline. There was no civilization in Egypt capable of creating the Sphinx 7,000 or 9,000 years ago. Therefore, the geological evidence must be wrong, or misinterpreted, or explained by some other mechanism. But Schoch is a geologist. He's spent his career studying rock weathering, and he stands by his analysis. The Sphinx enclosure shows rainfall erosion, period. Which means it must have been carved when regular rainfall occurred. Which means it's much older than 2,500 BC. As you drift deeper, as consciousness softens, consider the other water mysteries of Giza. The causeway connecting the pyramids to the Nile shows signs of water damage. Deep erosion that suggests flowing water, not just occasional rain. Some researchers have suggested that the Giza Plateau was once marshy. That water covered parts of the area. That the causeways weren't just ceremonial pathways, but functional docks. There are salt deposits in the Queen's Chamber of the Great Pyramid. Salt. In a sealed chamber in the middle of a desert. Where does salt come from? Water. Evaporated water, leaving its minerals behind. Some researchers suggest this is evidence of flooding. That the Nile once rose higher than it does today. That the pyramid, for a time, was partially submerged. That water flowed into the lower chambers and then, over years or centuries, evaporated, leaving salt crusts behind. This sounds absurd. How could the Nile flood high enough to reach into the pyramid? The pyramid sits on an elevated plateau, well above the river valley. But 12,000 years ago, sea levels were 400 feet lower than today. The Nile would have been a different river, flowing through a deeper valley. And when the ice melted, when sea levels rose, the Nile would have backed up, flooded, changed its course. For a time, during that climatic transition, water levels could have been dramatically different. Let your mind wander through these watery possibilities. Let them flow like the ancient rains, gentle and persistent. There are underwater structures in the Mediterranean, off the coast of Egypt, submerged ruins of cities. We know some of them, like Alexandria's ancient harbor, Cleopatra's Palace district, sank due to earthquakes and subsidence. But there are others, farther out, deeper down, that don't fit the known history. What if there were coastal settlements during the Ice Age, when sea levels were lower? Cities built on land that's now 400 feet underwater? Trade networks connecting communities that are now separated by ocean? Those settlements would have drowned as the ice melted, completely submerged, lost. And the people who lived there, if any survived, would have fled inland, to places like Giza, bringing their knowledge, building monuments that could withstand the rising waters. This is speculation. But it's geologically plausible speculation. The coastlines were different, the climate was different, the world was different. And perhaps the Sphinx is the last witness to that different world. The last monument still above water, still visible, still silently testifying to an age we've forgotten. As you rest, as you breathe, feel the gentle rhythm of water, rain falling on stone, rivers flowing through valleys, seas rising to cover what was once dry land. Water shapes everything it touches. Given enough time, water can wear down mountains, can carve canyons through solid rock, can transform landscapes completely. What has water erased from human history? What civilizations were drowned? What knowledge was lost when the libraries of coastal cities slipped beneath the waves? We tend to think of history as a progression, from primitive to sophisticated, from ignorant to enlightened, always moving forward. But what if it's a cycle, rise and fall, achievement and catastrophe, knowledge gained and knowledge lost. What if we're not the first technological civilization, but the latest in a long series? The geological record shows multiple catastrophic climate changes. The end of the Ice Age was just one. The Younger Dryas, a sudden return to glacial conditions that lasted over 1,000 years, was another. Massive floods, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts. The Earth is not a stable place. It's dynamic, violent at times. Any civilization arising before modern times would have been vulnerable to these catastrophes in ways we can barely imagine. No global communication, no rapid transportation, no ability to predict or prepare for massive climate shifts. A civilization at its height, sophisticated, urban, accomplished, could be shattered in a generation by the right catastrophe. Its people scattered, its knowledge fragmented, its monuments left to weather and time. And after centuries of survival mode, of struggling just to live, who would remember the old achievements? Who would preserve the old knowledge? It would fade into myth, into stories told by firelight, into legends that seem too fantastic to be true, until all that remains are the stones, mute, weathered, mysterious. The Sphinx has watched the climate change, has felt the rain stop and the desert grow, has seen the Nile shift its course, has witnessed civilization after civilization rise in its shadow, claim it, worship it, study it, and finally fade away themselves. And it remains, leonine and patient, keeping its secrets. Rests now in the presence of deep time, geological time, the time scale where mountains rise and fall, where seas become deserts and deserts become seas, where the works of humans are just momentary scratches on the surface of an ever-changing world. The water has been and gone, the rains have ceased, the floods have receded, but their marks remain, encoded in stone, waiting for those who know how to read them. And those marks tell a story different from the one we've been taught, a story of greater age, greater mystery, greater loss. A story that's still being eroded, still being weathered, still gradually disappearing under the patient assault of wind and sand and time. But for now, for tonight, as you rest, as you drift toward deeper sleep, the story remains. Incomplete, uncertain, but hauntingly beautiful in its incompleteness, like the Sphinx itself. Eroded, damaged, parts missing, but still powerful, still meaningful, still somehow eternal. Let that eternity hold you now. Let yourself be small and temporary in its presence. Let the centuries wash over you like water, wearing away the sharp edges of your thoughts, smoothing your consciousness into something formless and flowing. The water has stories to tell, but it tells them slowly, in whispers of erosion, in patterns of weathering, in the patient testimony of stone shaped by ancient rain. Listen to those whispers now. Let them become the sound of your own breathing. Let the rain that fell 10,000 years ago become the gentle rhythm that carries you into sleep. Rest now as we expand our view, as we pull back from Egypt, back from the Nile, back until we can see the whole world spread before us. Continents separated by vast oceans, cultures isolated by impossible distances. And yet, as you breathe slowly, as you sink deeper into comfort, consider this strange pattern that appears across the ancient world. Pyramids, not just in Egypt, everywhere. Mexico, the Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan, larger at its base than the Great Pyramid of Giza. Built by a culture we know almost nothing about. The city was already abandoned, already ancient when the Aztecs found it. They didn't know who built it. They could only call it the place where men became gods. Peru, Corral, the oldest civilization in the Americas, building pyramids and ceremonial platforms 5,000 years ago. Contemporary with Egypt, on the opposite side of the world. No contact between them, according to conventional history. And yet both cultures simultaneously decided to build massive stone pyramids. Cambodia, Angkor Wat, the largest religious structure in the world, aligned astronomically, built with precision-cut stone blocks, some weighing many tons. Its towers represent the 5 peaks of Mount Meru, the cosmic mountain at the center of the universe in Buddhist and Hindu cosmology. Indonesia, Gunung Padang, a stepped pyramid mountain that recent scanning has shown to be partially artificial. The upper layers date to a few thousand years ago, But the deeper layers, hidden beneath soil and vegetation, may be over 20,000 years old. Older than any known civilization, older than the end of the Ice Age, China, the White Pyramid. Actually a complex of pyramids near Xi'an, covered in vegetation now, appearing as natural hills, forbidden to foreign archaeologists for decades. Probably tombs of ancient emperors. But how ancient? Some researchers suggest they could predate the known Chinese dynasties. Bosnia. The Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun. Controversial. Many geologists claim it's just a natural hill with unusual symmetry. But excavations have revealed concrete-like material, worked stone, internal chambers. If it's artificial, and that's a significant if, it would be the oldest pyramid in Europe, possibly over 30,000 years old, according to carbon dating of organic material found in the structure. Let these locations wash over you like waves. Let yourself feel the impossibility of coincidence. Different continents, different time periods, different cultures with no known contact. And yet, the same architecture, the same astronomical alignments, the same precision engineering, the same choice to build mountains of stone, oriented to the heavens, meant to last forever. Why? Why this specific shape? Why pyramids? Some will say it's simple. A pyramid is the most stable structure. If you want to build something tall with primitive technology, a pyramid shape is the natural solution. Wide base for stability. Tapering toward the top. Simple geometry dictating similar conclusions from different cultures. But as you rest, as you drift, consider whether that explanation is enough. The pyramids aren't just stable structures. They're aligned to specific stars, to cardinal directions, to mathematical relationships. They encode sophisticated knowledge. They required organizational capabilities, mobilizing thousands of workers, managing logistics, maintaining precision across decades of construction that shouldn't exist in supposedly primitive cultures. And they all share similar myths. Stories of gods or ancestors who came from the sky or across the sea, who taught astronomy, agriculture, architecture, writing, who established civilization and then departed, promising to return. The Egyptians spoke of the Neteru, the gods who ruled before the pharaohs, of Thoth, god of wisdom and writing, who measured the earth and taught mathematics. The Mayans spoke of Kukulkan, the feathered serpent, who came from across the sea to teach and civilize before departing to the east. The Sumerians spoke of the Apkallu, the 7 sages who came from the sea before the flood, bringing knowledge and civilization. The Polynesian peoples speak of Mu, a lost homeland in the Pacific, a great civilization that sank beneath the waves. The Hindu texts describe Dwarka, a city that was swallowed by the ocean. Recent underwater archaeology has found structures off the coast of India that might be its ruins. Different cultures, different languages, no contact. And yet, the same basic story. There was an earlier civilization, advanced, knowledgeable, lost to catastrophe, leaving only fragments, monuments, teachings, myths. Let your mind wander through these global connections as you breathe, as consciousness softens towards sleep. There are maps, ancient maps, copied and recopied through the centuries. The Piri Reis map of 1513, showing Antarctica's coastline, accurately centuries before Antarctica was officially discovered. The coastline is shown as ice-free, which means the original map, which Piri Reis claimed to have copied from much older sources, must date to before the last ice age, when Antarctica wasn't covered in ice. Impossible. And yet, there it is. Examined by cartography experts, confirmed as accurate, inexplicable by conventional history. The King Jaime World Chart, the Orontes Phineas map, the Boache map, all showing Antarctica, all based on ancient sources, all depicting coastlines that have been ice-covered for thousands of years. Someone mapped Antarctica before it froze. Someone had the technology to explore, survey, and chart accurately. Someone whose civilization existed so long ago we have no other record of them except these maps, copied and preserved through the ages. As you drift deeper into rest, let yourself feel the connections forming, the global pattern emerging, not proof, nothing so certain as proof, but suggestions, patterns, correspondences that seem too consistent to be coincidence. Thor Heyerdahl, the Norwegian explorer, proved that ancient people could cross oceans. He built primitive boats using only materials and techniques available to ancient cultures, and successfully sailed across the Pacific, across the Atlantic. He showed that ocean barriers weren't as impassable as we assume. But why would ancient cultures cross oceans? What would motivate such dangerous voyages? Perhaps they weren't exploring. Perhaps they were fleeing. Perhaps they were survivors of a catastrophe, seeking new lands, carrying what knowledge they could preserve, teaching what they remembered to the people they encountered. And those people, receiving this knowledge, would remember the teachers as something more than human, as gods, as culture bringers from a lost golden age. The mystery is global because the catastrophe was global, the loss was global, the forgetting was global. But the monuments remain, scattered across continents, different in detail but similar in essence, stone testimony to something we've forgotten, something we are only beginning to remember. Rest in this global vision now. Let yourself see the world as one interconnected mystery. Let the distances dissolve. Let the separate become unified. All the ancient sites, all the precision engineering, all the astronomical alignments, all the myths and maps and monuments, all of it pointing backward toward a time before recorded history, when the world was young and different and perhaps more advanced than we can imagine. Some call this lost civilization Atlantis. Some call it Mu or Lemuria. Some call it the antediluvian world, the world before the flood. The name doesn't matter. Names are just labels we apply to mysteries we don't understand. What matters is the pattern, the consistency, the global distribution of similar knowledge, similar architecture, similar myths. Either every ancient culture independently decided to build massive stone pyramids, align them astronomically, encode sophisticated mathematics into their design, and tell stories about gods who taught them, all without ever communicating with each other. Or there was a common source, a shared origin, a parent civilization that predated and perhaps influenced all the others. The first explanation requires an extraordinary series of coincidences. The second requires us to believe that human civilization is older and more complex than our history books admit. Both are difficult. Both challenge comfortable assumptions. But one of them must be at least partially true. As you rest, as you breathe, as sleep draws nearer, let yourself release the need to choose. Let both possibilities exist. Let the mystery remain mysterious. The world is vast, time is deep. Human history stretches back much further than our records reach. The Earth has seen ice ages and warm periods, floods and droughts, catastrophes that reshape continents. In that vastness, in that depth, there is room for civilizations to rise and fall, leaving only their most enduring monuments behind. There is room for knowledge to be lost and partially recovered. There is room for mysteries that span the globe and stretch back into times we can barely imagine. The pyramids of Egypt are not alone. They are part of a global pattern, a worldwide mystery, a puzzle whose pieces are scattered across every continent, waiting to be connected. And perhaps we'll never complete the puzzle. Perhaps too many pieces are lost forever, buried under ocean or desert or jungle. Perhaps we're left with only fragments, tantalizing but incomplete. But those fragments are beautiful. Those mysteries are profound. And in their presence, we are reminded that we are not the pinnacle of human achievement. We are not the first to wonder, to build, to dream of permanence. We are just the latest chapter in a very long story. A story that began long before us and will continue long after we're gone. Rest now in the vastness of that story. Let it cradle you. Let the global mystery become a soft blanket of unknowing, comfortable, and warm. The pyramids stand, all over the world, different yet similar, ancient yet enduring, mysterious yet somehow familiar. They are humanity's longest conversation with time itself. And that conversation continues, in stone and silence, patient as stars. Let it lull you now. Let the global pattern become a gentle rhythm. Let yourself drift on the current of deep history, flowing backward toward sources we can only imagine. Sleep. Dream of pyramids rising on every continent. Dream of ancient connections. Dream of knowledge that spans the world. Deeper now into rest. deeper into the mystery. As your body relaxes completely, as your mind drifts in that space between waking and sleeping, consider the most fundamental question. Why? Why build something so massive, so precise, so enduring? What was the purpose? We are told the pyramids were tombs, grand sepulchres for pharaohs, monuments to royal ego, stairways to the afterlife built in stone. But let this belief soften as you breathe. Let it become questionable, uncertain. No mummy has ever been found in the Great Pyramid. No treasure, no funerary goods, nothing but empty chambers and bare stone passages. The granite sarcophagus in the king's chamber sits empty. Always has, as far as we know. No lid, no inscriptions, no evidence it ever contained a body. When the Caliph al-Ma'mun broke into the pyramid in 820 AD, his men found nothing. They searched every accessible chamber. They looked for the treasure they were certain must be hidden there. They found only emptiness. Later explorers found the same. Empty, silent, devoid of any contents that would confirm the tomb theory. Of course, Egyptologists argue, it was robbed in ancient times. The treasure taken, the mummy destroyed or removed, the tomb violated by those seeking wealth. But how? The pyramid was sealed. The entrance was hidden, covered by casing stones, invisible from the outside. No one could find the entrance. That's why al-Ma'mun had to tunnel through solid stone to get in. He couldn't find the door. So, when were these ancient robbers supposed to have entered? And how did they reseal the entrance so perfectly that it remained hidden for thousands of years? And why would robbers take literally everything, every scrap of evidence, every tiny artifact, leaving behind a space so clean it appears to have never been used? As you rest, as you drift, let yourself question the tomb theory. Not reject it, simply question it. Allow other possibilities to exist alongside it. What if the pyramids weren't tombs at all? What if they were something else entirely? Christopher Dunn, the machinist we mentioned earlier, studied the internal structure of the Great Pyramid and proposed a radical theory. The pyramid, he suggests, was a machine, a power plant, designed to convert the Earth's vibrational energy into usable power. Let that idea float through your consciousness like a dream, not asking you to believe it, just inviting you to consider it. Dunn points to specific features. The king's chamber is made of granite, a crystalline stone that can vibrate at specific frequencies. The chamber is sized to create standing waves, acoustic resonances. The shafts that lead from the chamber could have been conduits for chemicals or energy. The subterranean chamber, deep beneath the pyramid, shows evidence of chemical processes. The walls are corroded in patterns that suggest contact with acidic substances. There are channels cut into the floor that might have been for containing and directing fluids. The grand gallery, with its precise corbelled ceiling and its strange notches along the walls, could have been a resonator, a chamber designed to amplify specific frequencies. The sarcophagus itself, when struck, rings like a bell, a precise, clear tone. It's not a box for holding a body. It's a resonating chamber, sized and shaped to specific harmonic relationships. This all sounds fantastical. A power plant built in the Stone Age? Impossible. But as you rest, as you breathe, consider whether it's any more impossible than building the structure in the first place. If they could achieve that level of precision, that level of engineering, that level of mathematical sophistication, could they have been doing something beyond our current understanding? There are documented electromagnetic anomalies within the Great Pyramid, strange readings, unusual energy signatures, areas where compasses malfunction, where electronic equipment behaves erratically. Is this just natural background radiation, geological quirks? Or is it evidence that the structure was designed to interact with energy in ways we don't fully understand? The ancient Egyptians spoke of the pyramids as devices for resurrection, for transformation, for enabling the pharaoh to ascend to the stars and become one with the gods. We interpret this as religious metaphor, but what if it was technological description, rendered in the only language they had? What if the pyramids were healing chambers, regeneration devices, technologies for altering consciousness or extending life? What if ascending to the stars was a description of an actual process, a technology we've lost that these structures facilitated? Let your mind wander through these possibilities without resistance. In the space between sleeping and waking, all things can be considered. all possibilities can coexist. There are people who claim to have experienced unusual phenomena inside the pyramid, altered states of consciousness, visions, feelings of profound energy or presence, out-of-body experiences. Scientists and skeptics dismiss these as hallucination, suggestion, oxygen deprivation, or wishful thinking. And perhaps they're right. Perhaps it's nothing but psychology and expectation. But the reports are consistent, across centuries, across cultures. People who enter the king's chamber, especially those who lie in the sarcophagus, report similar experiences, a sense of leaving the body, of traveling, of connecting with something vast and cosmic. Napoleon himself claimed to have had a profound experience in the king's chamber. When his aides asked him about it later, he refused to discuss it, saying they would never believe him. He took the secret to his grave. What did he experience? What did he encounter in that granite chamber, deep inside the ancient stone? As you breathe slowly, as you relax completely, feel the resonance of these mysteries, the possibility that the pyramids are more than monuments, more than tombs, more than we can currently understand. Some researchers suggest they were astronomical observatories, the shafts allowing precise tracking of star positions, the chambers designed as viewing platforms, the entire structure a massive instrument for studying the heavens. But why build such a massive structure just to look at stars? Unless the observations themselves were the purpose, unless the knowledge they sought was crucial, unless they were tracking something important, something that mattered enough to justify the enormous investment of time and labor. Others suggest the pyramids were temples, places of initiation, where priests underwent sacred rituals, transformative experiences, tests of worthiness. The empty chambers weren't meant to hold bodies. They were meant to hold the living, temporarily, during profound spiritual experiences. The darkness, the isolation, the acoustic properties, all carefully designed to facilitate altered states of consciousness, to strip away the mundane, to open pathways to the transcendent. In many ancient cultures, initiates underwent trials in darkness and silence, shamanic journeys, mystery school initiations, rites of passage that involved temporary death and rebirth. What if the pyramid was the ultimate initiation chamber, the final test, the place where priests went to commune with whatever they understood as divine? The pharaoh himself, in ancient Egypt, was not just a political ruler. He was a god incarnate, the living embodiment of Horus, the mediator between the human and divine realms. What if the pyramid was where that transformation occurred, where a human became a god, where whatever process or ritual or technology that enabled that transformation took place? These ideas sound mystical, unscientific, unprovable. But as you rest, as consciousness dims, recognize that our science is not complete. Our understanding is not final. There are mysteries in physics, in consciousness, in the nature of reality itself that remain unsolved. We don't fully understand consciousness. We don't know why humans have such complex awareness. We don't understand the relationship between mind and matter at the quantum level. We don't know if intention can affect physical reality. But experiments in quantum physics suggest that observation does affect outcomes, that consciousness and reality are intertwined in ways we don't fully grasp. What if the ancient builders understood this? What if they had technologies based on principles of consciousness, vibration, resonance that we've only begun to rediscover? The pyramid isn't a tomb, it's a question, a massive, enigmatic, precisely engineered question that we're still trying to understand. Rest now in the presence of that question. Let it be unanswered. Let it remain mysterious. The pyramid's purpose is lost, or hidden, or beyond our current capacity to understand. And that's okay. That's perfect. That's exactly as it should be. Because the mystery itself is the gift, the invitation to wonder, the reminder that we don't have all the answers, that our ancestors might have known things we've forgotten, that the universe is stranger and more wonderful than our textbooks admit. Let the pyramid be what it is, mysterious, massive, eternal, purposeful in ways we can only glimpse and guess. And let that mystery cradle you now. Let it be the darkness that holds you. Let it be the space in which you rest. No need to solve it, no need to understand it. Just rest in its presence. Just exist alongside it. Just let yourself be small and wondering in the face of something so large and old and unknowable. The pyramid has stood for millennia. It will stand for millennia more, and its purpose, whatever it truly was, will remain its own secret, whispered in stone, patient as time itself. Sleep now. Dream of chambers in darkness. Dream of purposes beyond comprehension. Dream of ancient wisdom waiting to be rediscovered. Who, in the deepest quiet of your rest, in the stillness of approaching sleep, let this question drift through your mind like smoke. Who built the pyramids? Not the pharaoh's name we assigned to them, but the actual builders, the ones who understood the mathematics, who wielded the tools, who organized the labor, who possessed the knowledge. Who were they? The orthodox answer is simple. Egyptian workers, skilled laborers, conscripted peasants during the Nile's flood season, when farming was impossible. Copper tools, wooden ramps, rope, and determination. But as you breathe, as you sink deeper, let yourself feel the inadequacy of this answer, the way it doesn't quite fit, the way it leaves too many questions unresolved. Dr. Mark Lehner, the prominent Egyptologist, excavated the workers' village at Giza. He found bakeries, breweries, copper workshops, living quarters. He found fish bones and cattle bones, evidence that the workers were well fed, not slaves, but skilled labor, respected and provisioned. This discovery was important. It challenged the old notion that the pyramids were built by slaves. It showed that pyramid building was a national project, a source of pride, drawing workers from across Egypt. But finding the village doesn't explain how the work was done. Knowing that workers were fed and housed doesn't explain how they achieved precision that modern engineers struggle to match. The village holds several thousand people, perhaps 10,000 at most. These were the support staff, the bakers, brewers, tool makers, administrators. The actual construction crews would have been a fraction of that, a few thousand skilled workers, building 2.3 million blocks into a perfect pyramid in 20 years. The mathematics don't work, even if we're generous with estimates. Even if we assume incredible efficiency, the timeline is too short. The workforce is too small. Unless they weren't building the pyramid, unless they were maintaining it, repairing it, working on a structure that was already there, already ancient. Let that possibility rest in your consciousness as you drift. The workers were real, the village was real, but they weren't the original builders. They were a later civilization, working on monuments they inherited, keeping them functional, claiming them as their own. Graham Hancock and Robert Bauval suggest the pyramids were built by a predecessor civilization. People who lived during the last ice age, when the climate was different, when the Sahara was green, when the world was arranged differently. These people, call them what you will, Atlanteans, the elder culture, the first-time people, they had knowledge we've lost, technologies we don't understand, organizational capacity that vanished when their civilization fell. They built the pyramids, aligned to the stars as they appeared in 10,500 BC. They encoded mathematical knowledge into the structures. They created monuments designed to last through any catastrophe. Then came the flood, the climate change, the cataclysm. Their civilization shattered, their people scattered, their knowledge fragmented. But some survived. Some carried forward what they remembered. Some became the teachers, the priests, the gods who taught the next wave of human civilization. The Egyptians we know, the pharaohs of the historical dynasties, they were the inheritors, not the originators. They found the pyramids already there. They attributed them to their earliest ancestors. They created myths to explain what they didn't understand. And they maintained the structures, added their own constructions around the pyramids, built temples and causeways, buried their dead in nearby mastabas, tried to connect themselves to the glory of what came before. This is why there are no inscriptions about construction, because the historical Egyptians didn't build them. They just cared for them. This is why the construction methods remain mysterious, because the knowledge was already lost by the time of the dynastic period. This is why the precision is impossible, because it was achieved by people with capabilities beyond Bronze Age technology. As you rest, as you breathe, feel how this explanation resolves certain contradictions. Not all, but some. It provides a framework where the impossible becomes possible. But who were these predecessor people? Where did they come from? What did they look like? What language did they speak? We don't know. We have no bodies, no DNA, no artifacts we can definitively attribute to them. only the pyramids themselves, only the monuments that are too sophisticated, too precisely aligned, too mathematically advanced to fit comfortably into our timeline. Some researchers point to mysterious megalithic structures around the world as evidence of this lost civilization. Baalbek in Lebanon, with its massive foundation stones, each weighing over 800 tons. The precision polygonal masonry of Cusco in Peru, where stones fit together with irregular interlocking surfaces, no mortar, so precisely that blades cannot fit between them. The underwater structures off the coast of Japan, India, Cuba, submerged ruins that might date to before the flood. All of these sites show similar characteristics: massive stones, precision fitting, alignment to astronomy, and all of them are attributed to the cultures that inhabited the regions, but often with the acknowledgement that the dating is uncertain, the construction methods unknown. What if they're all connected? What if they're all remnants of the same global civilization, scattered across continents because that civilization was global, operating during a time when coastlines were different, when sea levels were lower, when the world was more accessible? Then came the catastrophe, the flood, the climate change, the mass extinction event at the end of the Pleistocene, when over 30 species of megafauna disappeared from the Americas alone. Something happened, something big enough to end a world. And after it ended, the survivors started over, reduced to small groups, scattered and isolated, struggling to survive, the knowledge slowly fading, the technologies slowly being lost, until only myths remained, stories of a golden age, of gods who walked among humans, of a time before the flood when the world was different. Let your consciousness drift through this possibility. A human civilization older than we recognize, more sophisticated than we credit, wiped out by catastrophe, leaving only its most durable monuments and its most persistent myths. It's a theory, unproven, controversial, rejected by mainstream archaeology, but it explains the mysteries. It accounts for the precision, the knowledge, the global patterns. It provides a reason for the silence in Egyptian records. They weren't hiding the truth, they simply didn't know it. The truth was already lost by their time. Of course, there are problems with this theory too. Where are the other artifacts? If this civilization was so advanced, why do we only find the monuments, not the tools, the weapons, the daily objects that any civilization would leave behind? Perhaps because they're underwater, submerged when sea levels rose 400 feet at the end of the Ice Age. The cities on the continental shelves, now deep beneath the ocean. The trade routes now ocean channels. The heartland of civilization now inaccessible, covered by billions of tons of water and sediment. Or perhaps because we're not looking in the right places. We excavate where we expect to find things, based on our understanding of where civilizations should arise. But if we're wrong about the timeline, we're looking in the wrong geological layers, digging at depths that postdate the civilization we're searching for. Or perhaps because time has erased them. 12,000 years is a long time. Wood rots, fabric decays, copper corrodes, even iron oxidizes to dust. Only stone endures. Only the very largest stone structures survive millennia intact. Rest now in the uncertainty. Let the questions remain unanswered. Let the builders remain in shadow, mysterious and distant. Whoever they were, whether they were the Egyptians of the 4th dynasty working with knowledge we don't understand, or an earlier civilization whose legacy the Egyptians inherited, they were human. They had hands like ours, minds like ours, the same capacity for wonder, for ambition, for achievement. And they built something that has lasted, something that still inspires awe, something that still poses questions we cannot answer. That's their legacy. Not certainty, but mystery. Not answers, but enduring questions. And perhaps that was always the intent. Perhaps the pyramids were meant to outlast the culture that built them, meant to survive when everything else faded, meant to stand as permanent questions for future generations. Who built us? When? How? Why? The stones don't answer, they just stand, patient, eternal, keeping their secrets close. And in that silence, in that mystery, there is something beautiful, something that invites us to remain humble, to acknowledge that we don't know everything, that our history books are incomplete, that the human story is longer, stranger, more mysterious than we imagine. The builders are gone, lost to time, lost to catastrophe, lost to the inevitable erosion of memory. But their work remains, and in its endurance they remain too. Nameless, unknown, but present. Always present. Watching us puzzle over what they created. Waiting, perhaps, for us to finally understand. Or perhaps not waiting for understanding. Perhaps just waiting. Patient as stone, silent as the desert, eternal as the stars they align their monuments to. Sleep now, dream of builders in shadow. Dream of hands shaping stone. Dream of knowledge that spans millennia. The builders have rested for thousands of years. Rest with them now, in the darkness, in the mystery, in the peaceful acceptance of unknowing. In the deepest quiet of this night, in the stillness of your rest, consider one final question. Not who or how or when, but what. What are the pyramids trying to tell us? If they are more than tombs, if they encode mathematical knowledge, astronomical alignments, geological information, if they were designed to survive any catastrophe, any fall of civilization, any loss of knowledge, then they are a message, written in the most permanent medium possible, stone, massive, precisely shaped, impossible to miss, impossible to destroy, impossible to ignore. But what does the message say? Let your mind drift through the possibilities as you breathe, as consciousness floats in that space between thought and sleep. The simplest message: we were here, we existed, we achieved, remember us. This is the basic human desire, to leave a mark, to matter, to not be forgotten. Every civilization has felt this, built monuments to themselves, declared their importance to eternity. But if that's all the pyramids were, monuments to ego, why include the mathematical relationships? Why encode pi and the golden ratio? Why align to specific stars at specific times? Why create a structure that describes the dimensions of Earth itself? Unless the mathematics is part of the message. Unless they're saying, we knew, we understood. We calculated the cosmos and measured the planet, and we want you to know we did this. The pyramids might be a test, a way of identifying civilizations sophisticated enough to decode them, like a message left for our future selves, or for whatever civilization might arise after ours falls. If you can understand this, the pyramids might be saying, then you're ready. You've achieved the necessary level of knowledge. You're capable of grasping what we knew. And what did they know? What is the deeper message hidden in the alignments and angles and proportions? Some researchers believe the pyramids encode a warning about catastrophic cycles, about periodic catastrophes that reshape civilization, about the precession of the equinoxes and how it relates to climate change and cosmic events. The 26,000-year precessional cycle appears again and again in ancient texts, in mythologies, in sacred numbers. The ancient Egyptians knew about precession. The Mayans tracked it. The Vedic texts of India describe it. It's a slow cycle, imperceptible in a human lifetime. But ancient civilizations tracked it over centuries, over millennia, passing knowledge from generation to generation. Why? Why track such a slow cycle unless it matters? Unless something important happens at certain points in the cycle? Some researchers suggest that at specific points in Earth's precessional journey, our planet becomes more vulnerable to cosmic events. Asteroid impacts, comet showers, solar radiation, magnetic field reversals. The pyramids aligned to specific precessional positions might be marking these dangerous periods, saying, this is when it happened to us. This is when our world ended. When you reach this point in the cycle again, be prepared, be vigilant, survive where we could not. This is speculation, but it's thoughtful speculation. It treats ancient people as intelligent, forward-thinking, capable of deep time awareness. Another message hidden in the pyramids: unity. The global distribution of similar monuments suggests that, at some point, humanity was connected. Different regions, different continents, but sharing knowledge, trading information, operating as a single global culture. Then something separated us: the catastrophe, the flood, the climate change. Suddenly, the easy coastal routes were underwater. The temperate zones became deserts. The people scattered, isolated, each group struggling to survive, to maintain their own small piece of the larger knowledge. The pyramids and similar monuments around the world might be saying, we were united once. This knowledge was shared. Remember that. Remember that humanity is one family, separated by catastrophe, but sharing a common origin. If true, this is a profound message, one we desperately need to hear in our divided modern world. Or perhaps the message is simpler still. Perhaps the pyramids are saying, the physical world is not all there is. There are other levels of reality, other dimensions of existence. The spiritual is real, the transcendent is accessible. These structures were built as bridges between worlds. The ancient Egyptians believed in an afterlife, in transformation, in the possibility of becoming more than human, of joining with the divine. The entire focus of their civilization was on the transition from life to death to continued existence in another form. And what if they weren't wrong? What if they knew something we've forgotten in our materialist age? What if consciousness does continue? What if there are technologies, internal technologies of consciousness, meditation, ritual, that allow access to these other realms? The pyramid, then, would be a device for facilitating this transition. A machine not of metal and electricity, but of stone and vibration and consciousness itself. This sounds mystical, new age, unscientific. But quantum physics has revealed that consciousness and physical reality are entangled in ways we don't understand. That observation affects outcomes. That the material world might be less solid, less separate from consciousness than classical physics assumed. What if ancient people understood this intuitively? What if they built their technologies around different principles than ours? Not mechanisms and gears, but resonance and consciousness, and the subtle energies we're only beginning to measure? The message would be, there is more. Don't limit yourselves to the material. Don't forget the spiritual. Don't lose the knowledge of how to navigate the invisible realms. We built these structures to remind you, to show you it's possible, to give you the tools if you can remember how to use them. As you rest now, as you sink into the deepest peace, let all these possible messages coexist. Let them blend together like light through water, creating patterns that shift and change depending on how you look at them. Maybe the message is all of these things. Maybe it's something we haven't even considered yet. Maybe it's so far beyond our current understanding that we can't decode it yet. We can only recognize that it exists, that there is a message, that the pyramids are not random, not accidental, not simple. They are speaking. They have been speaking for thousands of years. We're only beginning to learn their language, and perhaps that's the ultimate message: patience. Time is vast. Understanding comes slowly. Don't rush. Don't force interpretations. Let the knowledge reveal itself gradually. As you become ready to receive it, the pyramids have waited for millennia. They can wait longer still. They are patient teachers, standing in silence, offering their wisdom to anyone who approaches with humility and openness. We are not the first to study them. Ancient Greeks came and wondered. Romans came and marveled. Medieval scholars came and calculated. Renaissance scientists came and measured. Modern archaeologists come and excavate. Generation after generation, approaching these monuments, asking questions, proposing theories, contributing small pieces to the gradually growing understanding. And generation after generation, the pyramids remain mysterious, always slightly beyond our full comprehension, always keeping one more secret, always inviting one more question. This is not a failure of human understanding. This is the gift the pyramids give, the eternal invitation to wonder, to question, to reach beyond our current knowledge towards something greater. In our modern world, we've become uncomfortable with mystery. We want answers, data, proof, certainty. We've forgotten how to rest in the presence of the unknowable, how to let questions exist without resolution. The pyramids remind us how. They model patience, endurance, the beauty of remaining mysterious, the power of silence. And perhaps that's their greatest message, the one that matters most, especially now as you drift towards sleep, as consciousness fades, as you enter the mystery of dreams. You don't need to understand everything. You don't need to solve every puzzle. You don't need certainty to rest. You can exist peacefully in the presence of mystery. You can let questions go unanswered. You can surrender to the vast, unknowable universe and trust that it's okay not to know. The pyramids teach this by simply being, by standing, by refusing to fully reveal themselves, by remaining mysterious despite millennia of study. They are monuments to mystery itself, to the beautiful, profound, eternal mystery of existence, and they invite us to join them, to stop struggling for answers, to stop demanding certainty, to simply rest in wonder, to simply be without needing to understand. This is their message, this is their gift, this is what they've been trying to teach us all along. Let it in now. Let the mystery enfold you completely. Let yourself dissolve into the unknowing, trusting that it's safe, that it's peaceful, that it's exactly where you need to be. The pyramids have delivered their message across thousands of years, across cultural boundaries, across the vast distance between their time and ours. And the message is simple: rest, wonder, release your need for certainty. Trust the mystery. All is well in the unknowing. As you rest now in the deepest peace, in the final moments before sleep claims you completely, let us return to where we began, to the Giza Plateau, to the Great Pyramid, to the stones that have witnessed so much time, so much history, so much human wondering. The sun is setting, the desert cooling, the last tourist departing, and there, in the gathering darkness, the pyramid stands exactly as it has for thousands of years. Patient, silent, eternal. Nothing we've explored tonight changes the pyramid itself. It remains what it is, regardless of what we believe about it, regardless of who built it, or when, or how, or why. The stones don't care about our theories. They simply endure. And perhaps that's the final truth we needed to encounter, that the pyramid's existence is independent of our understanding, that it will continue standing long after we're gone, that in the vast scope of time, our beliefs about it matter hardly at all. This could be depressing, but as you breathe slowly, as you sink into complete relaxation, let it be comforting instead. The pyramid takes the pressure off. It says, you don't need to figure me out. You don't need to solve my mystery. I'll still be here whether you understand me or not. What freedom there is in that. What peace. We spend so much of our lives trying to understand, to categorize, to explain, to know with certainty. It's exhausting. It's endless, because there's always more to know, always another mystery, always another question. But the pyramid, in its silent endurance, offers a different way, the way of acceptance, of peace with mystery, of resting in the presence of the unknowable without needing to conquer it. This is not giving up. This is not intellectual surrender. This is wisdom, the wisdom of knowing when to stop pushing, when to stop demanding answers, when to simply be present with what is, as it is, mysterious and magnificent. All the theories we've explored tonight, the alternative dating, the lost civilizations, the advanced technologies, the global connections, the encoded messages, they're all attempts to explain, to make sense, to fit the pyramid into a framework we can understand. And some of these theories might be true, parts of them, pieces, mixed with parts of the orthodox explanations, mixed with truths we haven't even imagined yet. But we don't need to know which theories are correct to benefit from the pyramid's presence. We don't need to solve the mystery to be enriched by it. The mystery itself is the gift. The wondering is the point. The questions are more valuable than the answers could ever be, because questions keep us humble, keep us curious, keep us reaching beyond ourselves towards something greater. Keep us connected to the long chain of humans who've stood before these stones and wondered, just as we wonder, just as people will wonder thousands of years from now. As you rest, as you breathe, as sleep finally takes you, let yourself feel part of that chain, part of the eternal conversation between humans and mystery, between consciousness and the cosmos, between what we know and what we can never fully know. You are not alone in your wondering. You stand with Napoleon and Herodotus, with ancient priests and medieval scholars, with modern scientists and future explorers not yet born. All of you gathered around the same mystery, all of you asking the same questions, all of you enriched by the asking. The pyramid doesn't judge your theories, doesn't correct your interpretations, doesn't reveal itself to some and hide from others. It offers itself equally to all, the skeptic and the believer, the scientist and the mystic, the certain and the confused. It is democratic mystery, universal wonder, accessible to anyone who approaches with openness and humility. And what it offers is not information, but transformation, not facts, but perspective, not answers, but the peace that comes from accepting that some things are beyond our understanding, and that's perfectly okay. This is the pyramid's final gift, the one it gives freely to anyone who will receive it. The gift of peaceful unknowing, the gift of comfortable mystery, the gift of rest in the presence of the eternal. Let that gift settle over you now like a blanket, like the darkness itself, like the ancient stones settling into the earth, patient and permanent, content to simply be. You don't need to remember everything you've heard tonight. You don't need to form conclusions or choose theories or decide what's true. You can let it all drift away like sand on the wind. Let the specific questions fade. Let the details blur and soften. What remains is the feeling, the sense, the deep wordless recognition that the world is bigger than we know, that history is longer than we remember, that mystery is real and present and beautiful, and that we can rest in that mystery, can trust it, can let it hold us as we sleep. The Great Pyramid has stood for so long that it has become part of the earth itself, part of the landscape, part of the eternal pattern of stone and sky and time. And as you sleep tonight, you become part of that pattern too, part of the eternal rest, part of the great mystery of consciousness rising and falling like breath, like waves, like the slow cycles of stars and civilizations and everything that has ever been and will ever be. Rest now, completely, totally, without resistance. The pyramid is resting too, has been resting for thousands of years, will rest for thousands more, patient, silent, perfect in its mysterious endurance. And in this moment, in this deep night, you and the pyramid are the same, both existing, both breathing, both resting in the vast mystery of being. Let the questions go. Let the theories dissolve. Let the wondering fade into peace. There is nothing to understand, nothing to solve, nothing to prove or disprove. There is only this moment, this breath, this deep, restful darkness that holds everything. Pyramids and questions, theories and truths, memory and forgetting, sleep and dreaming, existence and mystery, all held in the same vast, peaceful silence. Rest in that silence now. Let it be complete. Let it be enough. The pyramids will still be standing tomorrow. The mysteries will still be there. The questions will remain. But for now, for tonight, let them all go. Let yourself go. Let everything fade into the deep, peaceful darkness of sleep. You are safe. You are resting. You are held by the same eternal forces that hold the pyramids, the stones, the earth itself. Nothing is required of you. Nothing needs to be understood. Nothing needs to change. Just rest. Just breathe. Just be. The mysteries are patient. They will wait. And so, gently, peacefully, without fanfare or conclusion, our journey ends where it began, in wonder, in mystery, in the comfortable darkness of unknowing. Sleep now. Dream well. Let the pyramids watch over your rest as they've watched over humanity's rest for thousands of years. Good night. Rest deeply. All is mystery. All is peace. All is well.